Fabrizio Romano has confirmed that Aston Villa's Douglas Luiz is the number one priority midfield signing for Arsenal Football Club. He has confirmed that today in a tweet that you can see on the screen now. There's been a feeling amongst Arsenal fans for a while that the midfield needs to be improved. And come this January, we know there are talks of Ivan Toney. There are now obviously going to be talks of Douglas Luiz. They're going to intensify after the news has been revealed by Fabrizio Romano that he is top of the list. He is the number one priority midfield player for Mikel Arteta. As the Gooners, we already know they're more than likely going to be in a title race this year. To add those reinforcements to maybe get them over the line, is Douglas Luiz that guy, in your opinion? I want to gauge your views. I want to garnish your opinions. I want to understand and ascertain your thoughts and feelings on this. So leave us your comments below. Please make sure like buttons have been hit and that you are subscribing to the Football Terrace. Now, in terms of Douglas Luiz, look, he's a quality player, absolute quality player. I think I made a bit of a mistake on a previous video about him where I said he came through the City Academy. He wasn't quite an academy player. City bought him, I think, when he was 17, 18 years of age. Maybe that's why I got confused. But he was at Man City when he was a younger player. And he'd really been setting the world alight, especially under Unai Emery at Aston Villa. However, let us not get sidetracked from the fact that at the end of the summer 2022 window, Arsenal made a very late attempt to bring him to the Emirates Stadium. It didn't go through. He signed a new deal. That was before Unai Emery arrived. So there's always been an interest from Mikel Arteta. Maybe back to the Man City days. I'm sure that they crossed paths at some point. I haven't gone back to check the dates. They were both at the club. But maybe that is where this all stems from. And I think he would be a huge improvement to that Arsenal midfield, especially with Thomas Partey injured at the moment, seemingly going out the door. We'll move on to that story in a moment. Of course, Unai Emery has spoken about Douglas Luiz, and he says here that he is playing very well and he is committed. He is committed, is amazing. And he goes, he wants him to stay here. He also goes on to say, I am very happy with him and I want to keep him. Of course, I think he's happy with us too. And look, if they were to ask Douglas Luiz his opinion on joining Arsenal, he'd say I'm an Aston Villa player. I think he'd be professional. I think he would respect the football club that pays his wages, the fans that, of course, contribute towards that massively. But I do think Douglas Luiz would like to be an Arsenal player. I mean this with no disrespect to Aston Villa in terms of the size of the two football clubs in 2023. The fact that although Villa are doing very well at the moment, only a couple of points off the top of the table, they probably will fade away from that at some point. Will they stay at the top? How long will Unai Emery be there? Will the next manager be as good? It's hard to say. With Arsenal, there is a feeling that they're in a stronger position than Aston Villa. However, Aston Villa's form, and Douglas Luiz being a big part of that, makes it a more difficult decision than maybe a year or so ago. But how do you see this one playing out? I'd love to know your thoughts and your feelings. Is he good enough for Arsenal? Can Arsenal get him away from Aston Villa? And will this be a January signing, or is it more likely to be in the summer of 2024? We mentioned Partey earlier. There's a report that's come out today that claims that Juventus are keen to sign the midfielder in January and have 3 Premier League players on their shortlist, including, of course, Partey, Calvin Phillips, and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. 3 players who are, for one reason or another, not playing. You know, when everybody's fit at Tottenham, Højbjerg's on the bench. He was very close to leaving in the summer. Calvin Phillips can barely get to kick a ball since he's been at Man City. And Thomas Partey, Arsenal were open to allowing him to leave in the summer. That didn't come to fruition. For one reason or another, that didn't come to fruition. And he didn't move on. He's had countless injury problems throughout the course of this season. And I think it's clear for people to see, or at the very least, it's safe to assume that one of the reasons Arsenal and Arteta were happy for him to leave must have been surrounding the underlying issues with these injuries. We know that sports science now, and the kind of technology surrounding it, can give you, if it's implemented correctly, an idea of a body sort of decreasing in its stamina, its resistance against injuries, recovery time, etc. So I'm not surprised. But could Juve be an option for him? I think they will have to sell someone like Thomas Partey because of FFP they're very close to the FFP limit, Arsenal, so they're going to have to get sales in. Would Thomas Partey be your pick if you're an Arsenal fan watching? Let us know in the comments section below. Now, I want to go back to Fabrizio Romano here and touch on Chelsea for a moment. These are comments from Fabrizio after another week where Chelsea lose, another week where there's some sort of turmoil and problems surrounding Chelsea. Fabrizio says the feedback is still the same on Chelsea's side, and they trust for Maurizio Pochettino. They believe he is the right man for this project. It's a young team, and they need time. His job is not at risk at this point. And I just agree that has to be the stance moving forward. It is a young squad. If, for instance, and we'll move on to a transfer story in the moment, which I think is very key and pivotal for Chelsea moving forward. If this squad had 4, 5, 6 more players in its starting lineup who were 25, 26, 27 years of age, heavily experienced, had won major trophies in the past, then I think the conversation would be very different with the team sitting in 10th, potentially 11th by the end of Monday Night Football tonight. I think the conversation would be wholly different. But we know what Chelsea are trying to build. They're going for this youth project. They are looking to add more experience to this team in the forthcoming windows. But with the current average age of this squad, the way it's been built and put together so quickly, the volume of transfers in and out, the destabilizing that does, the fact that no team has behaved in this way before, they are just going to have to be patient for the kinks to be ironed out. It's as simple and as straightforward as that for me. And I believe any kind of panic to move the manager on is only going to delay them improving on a regular basis further. So I do think it's important for them to get this absolutely spot on this time around. And that brings us to an interesting story that comes out today from the Telegraph that Chelsea are set to make Napoli's Victor Osimhen their prime target in January, with the 24-year-old open to a move to Stamford Bridge. And I understand some Chelsea fans want Tony, and I don't think Tony would be a bad approach either. But they need players like that. On Victor Osimhen, we know how deadly he is. Some people think Serie A tax, maybe he's a little bit overrated. I personally don't. I view him as a player that I believe when he comes to the Premier League, he's going to have an outstanding impact. I believe he's a predator in front of goal. He is clinical. He has the physical attributes which you now need to play in the Premier League. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you could have got away without being quick off the mark. You could have got away with not being the strongest player on the pitch, but it is becoming harder and harder. If the athleticism isn't there, even your skill set can let you down slightly. You even need to be so superior with your skill set if your athleticism is low. And Victor Osimhen has it all. And I think there's a player in here. I know he's had a great time at Napoli, won their first title in donkey's years. He's such a prominent figure in Serie A, such a prominent figure in Napoli. But I do think, I believe the Premier League is the biggest and the best league in the world, certainly the most marketable league in the world. And I believe it's a place that players should want to come and ply their trade. And from Chelsea's point of view, he's exactly the profile they need in terms of scoring goals. Of course, it's an obvious thing. But he's also that little bit older and that little bit more experienced. He's played in the Champions League. He's won major league titles. He's played under immense pressure. And I think that is now what Chelsea have to add. Players of that ilk. Players who have been there and done it and worn the T-shirt, or of a certain vintage, a certain age, and have a certain level of experience to help these young players who, as we saw on Saturday afternoon against Newcastle, they were just immature. And of course, they should be criticized, and of course, they should be sort of pushed to improve on that. But their immaturity is because they are fledglings. The majority of those players are young and they're inexperienced, and it takes time to learn. When you learn to drive, you pass your test, and you know all the technical ways to drive. But it takes a good few years to really learn the road, learn to anticipate, learn to see things before they happen. And you only gain that. That's only created by experience. And Chelsea need to buy some while their young players continue to grow and get better. But Victor Osimhen in January, Chelsea fans, I know there's a big debate between him or Ivan Toney and who you should go for. I'd love to get your views, opinions, and feelings on that in the comment section below. Please hit the like button before you leave today. Until next time, take care, goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you all again soon. Peace.